In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 156 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is comfort zone. Our quote of the day comes to us from Eleanor Roosevelt. Do one thing every day that scares you. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. I'm excited to bring you today's episode. Our guest took a challenge from December of 2015, and he turned it into his own personal movement. As he just finished his first book, today Jesse Harless shares the importance and intrigue of what a cold shower can do for you both mentally and physically. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Jesse, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be here.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to make it happen today?
Hell yes. Let's do this.
Awesome. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you had either a no-quit story yourself or a challenging time that really tested you, but you kept on going and you didn't quit.
Yeah, I think the one that immediately comes to mind is due to my drug addiction. I'm someone in long-term recovery for the last 12 years from, drugs and alcohol. And so, because of my addiction and my use, I ended up getting a few federal felonies. And at 28 years old, I was 6 years in recovery. And I had to branch out and get outside of my comfort zone to face the fact that I had these felonies, because I didn't have to the first 6 years because my employer didn't care. But I went to apply to a Fortune 15 company, and the reality of these felonies became true. So I went through multiple phone interviews, and they always wanted to know what were my charges. They asked me who I was, but they always asked, what are these charges? What are these charges? And I told them everything. I didn't leave anything out. I told them every detail about my addiction and my recovery. And after the fifth interview, after about 2.5 months of interviewing, I got the job. And that kind of it changed my whole life. It changed the trajectory of my life. It wasn't even about the job. It was more of the victory of I can do anything. And I felt unstoppable. So from there, I just went on and ended up winning the highest award they actually have in the company. And so, it was more than a job, but that was probably the one of the most significant times in my life was getting that job.
Well, congratulations for sticking through it. And I'm going to butcher the quote, but there's a couple of famous quotes I know about the process of it's not actually the end result, but it's what happens and how you change along the journey. So obviously that 2 or 2.5 month process of before you actually got the job, you clearly kept going and you didn't quit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the key. Fear is going to keep me in my comfort zone. It's going to keep me at the same job. And I had to play through that. And because I did that, that opened up other doors too to say, just because of my past, it's not going to stop me from creating an exciting future.
No, and I love that, and I appreciate your candor with those felonies. And I think, if anything, it should prove and show to our listeners is that anybody can make a fresh start. It doesn't matter where you are. But the biggest and the most important part of the thought process is the next step, which is going ahead and actually taking action. And you did. You owned up to that, and obviously you went ahead and you've been successful since then. So speaking about success, I wanted to ask you, Jesse, how do you personally define success?
Yeah, so success for me, I would say is getting up every day and taking care of myself. So radical self-care. So it's getting up if you do a morning process, let's say like the morning routine, I know Hal's been on the show, and, radical self-care. So if I get up and I'm taking care of myself, and then from there, I'm going out in my day and making things happen, achieving goals. But success to me is really number one, radical self-care, taking care of my health, taking care of my my body, my mind, my spirit, and meditation, yoga, all these different things that all these habits that you can stack in the morning before the day begins, and even like a cold shower, which I know we'll get into. I look at success as it starts with taking care of myself first, self-care, and then going out and achieving whatever I have set for myself. So for me, success really it's self-care first, and everything else will be achieved after that.
I love that you touch on that, and we'll jump to the routine in a minute. But last week we had a woman by the name of Ashley Brown on the show, and she has a book about morning rituals and morning routines and the importance of them. So to jump into that question, you briefly touched on it, but do you have a very specific morning routine that you do each and every day?
I do. It's evolved quite a bit, but I do have a specific morning routine. I had somewhat of a morning routine, and then in about 2015, I read the book, The Miracle Morning. Again, I'm a huge fan of that book. They have the Miracle Morning for Addiction Recovery book that is now out. And so that kind of showed me that I could stack all these habits in the morning. And so I started practicing that process with some of the things I was already doing. But today it looks a lot different. So today my morning routine, when I get up, first thing I do is I throw cold water on my face. So when I go right into the bathroom, I splash cold water on my face and a few times, and then obviously brush the teeth, do that process. But then I do 3 minutes of stretching. So right away I'm doing stretching, and then from there I'm getting into my first meditation. And then I actually do 2 meditations back to back, and then I do a visualization. I actually do the visualization at the end of my meditation, and the visualization is simply visualizing what I'm doing for the day. What are my goals for the day? And I don't like have to see perfectly what's going to happen. I just kind of visualize the day until the end of the day. And I finish the day with journaling. So like that's how I always usually wrap up my visualization, just seeing myself journal the day. And then I'll do a visualization right after that of the biggest goal I have for the year, kind of a goal that scares me. So it might sound like it takes 15 minutes to do that. It takes me about 3 minutes to do that visualization. And then from there I'll get into my affirmations, and then a cold shower. So I end it with a cold shower. That's pretty much the morning routine.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a second, but wanted to ask a question, and maybe it might make sense. But if you had to define yourself in only one word, what would that word be?
I would say driven.
So we're going to jump into now the whole idea of the cold shower and your book, which you sent to me and I read, and I really enjoyed it. And the reason I really enjoyed it is the simplicity of what it stands for. Not to in any way say that the book or the idea is simple or easy, but I loved the simplicity of it. And before we went live, you said something, because I shared with you that this morning I actually took my first cold shower, and I'm giving myself a challenge to see if I can do these cold showers 30 days in a row. And you briefly touched on, before we went live, the behavior change and going ahead and actually doing it. So I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind just giving our listeners a little bit of backstory about your actual book, and then maybe you can tell us a little bit about it and what you're doing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And nice job with the cold shower. It's not easy. It's definitely a lot of discomfort on the first shower. So the backstory of the cold shower is again, the busiest time in my life that I can remember was around December of 2015. A lot was going on. I had a new full-time job as a manager. I was doing a full-time internship for my master's program, taking master's classes, taking care of my recovery, all these things at once. And so my friend at the time came and challenged me to a 30-day cold shower challenge randomly. And I was kind of known at the time as it might sound funny, but stressy Jesse. I was really like, I was stressed in a lot of different ways, just because of what was happening. So he's like, you should do this cold shower challenge. And I said, no way. Like that makes no sense. I love my hot showers. I'm a hot shower addict, and I'm okay with that. And so my roommate though at the time immediately ran upstairs and took the cold shower. And so that got me to think. It was like 5 p.m. at night. December, it was a cold night. And, I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. So I jumped in the cold. So what I did is I turned the water all the way cold, which was kind of crazy, maybe not a great idea for the first shower. I turned it all the way cold. I turned on some music. I jumped in. I lost my breath for probably 30 seconds. And then I proceeded for 5 minutes. I stayed in for 5 minutes. I came out. And for the next 3 hours, I'm someone who's always struggled with anxiety, like specifically like social anxiety. And I had a meeting to go to later that night. And for the next 3 hours, I felt like this euphoric high. I felt, someone who's so used to addiction, we're always chasing that dopamine high, but I want healthy ones now. And so that's what I felt. I felt like this euphoric high that I hadn't felt in a long time. And when I sat in that meeting, I didn't have the anxiety. And I said, whoa, there's something to this. So that was my very first shower. It had an immediate impact. And from there, I just said, I'm going to do this 30-day challenge. I completed it. And, I just never stopped. And so it's been almost 3 years, and, I still take them every day.
Well, I definitely didn't feel euphoric for the next 3 hours, but it definitely wakes you up. So I only have 29 more days to go. But like you said, I think you look for those different highs, and I think we all look for different things. So jumping into your book, I wanted to just ask if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about your book and how kind of you went ahead and actually writing the book, because I think a lot of people have ideas and concepts, and I'm actually in the process of writing my own first book. So definitely kudos to you for doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book's called Smash Your Comfort Zone with Cold Showers. And so the idea behind it is, the principle is smash your comfort zone, right? We all live in a comfort zone, every single one of us. And so that's really why I wrote the book. People are asking me, when I started telling them about cold showers, they'd ask me, why do you take cold showers? What are the health benefits? What's the science? And I said, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in more of, feeling the fear and doing anyway. Just living in that comfort zone and just smashing through it so that I can get things done, so that I can ultimately reach my full potential. That's why I take the cold shower. So I ended up with the book, how I wrote it, just to tell you a little bit about that, because it's a short book. It's probably less than an hour read. So how I wrote that book is actually, I learned about an 8-minute writing habit. And so I promised myself that no matter what, I would write for 8 minutes every single night. It might sound crazy, but I just did 8 minutes every single night. And before you know, in 3 months, I had the whole first draft completed. And so for anyone out there who's thinking about writing a book, it's possible. And, I think about if I had an hour in the morning, like I hear some of, my mentors who write 1 hour every morning, I would just do 8 minutes at night. And I popped out this cold shower book. And, of course, after that, there's always, editing and all that stuff. But the book was done. And so what was your question? Sorry.
No, no, I appreciate that backstory on the book and how you went about doing it. I did not know that 8-hour or 8-minute, nor have I heard of that. I've heard of different things, similar things. But I think that's amazing, because the reality is, if you do anything for 8 minutes every single day and you stick to it, the reason why you're going to achieve that goal or objective is because consistently every single day. Now, if you add up a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you compound it, obviously that's a significant amount of writing, but I think that's the best way to attack any goal or objective, is to break it down into bite-sized pieces. And that's something that we often talk about, not only on our podcast, but also on stage and with our clients, is to look at that end goal, but then back into and reverse engineer what you need to do every single day and every week. And I think a lot of times people look at that huge goal, and it becomes a little bit of that paralysis by analysis, where you say, I can't write a book, it's too big. But you did the opposite. You said, okay, I'm going to start with 8 minutes every single night. And obviously you've gone ahead and done that. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's possible. To everyone out there, it's possible. And that's another reason why I finished this now. I do want to say that the book was finished last year, and it took me time to get over fear and perfectionism, really, to be able to then just let go of not being a cold shower scientist, and having all these expectations for myself, just letting it go, and just to get the book out there,
No, I think that's the hardest part sometimes, is just going ahead and doing it. And like I said, a minute or so ago, it's a little bit of that paralysis by analysis where you look at that huge goal and you say, I can't do it, it's too big. But like you just said, you just let it go and you do it.
100%.
So I want to change lanes here for a second. I was curious to ask you a question. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I thought about this a little bit. And, I would actually go to dinner with my grandfather. He passed away when I was 16. But he was a significant role model. He was, my father had left the scene at 5 and never came back. So he became the role model, the male model in my life. And for the time we got to spend together, it was so impactful. He fought in World War II. He was a Golden Gloves boxing champion. He just was a fascinating person with a sunny disposition. And, at his funeral, there was hundreds of people that I didn't know that came. And he was just a fascinating person I didn't really get to know too much about. I just knew he had this sunny disposition that I wanted to emulate in my own life. So, and he was always telling jokes and stories and just someone who I'd like to model after. So if there's anyone I could take to dinner, it'd actually be my grandfather. His name's Hank Ryder.
If he was in World War II and a Golden Gloves boxer, I would definitely not mess with him.
Yeah, his thumbs were like bent backwards from breaking so many times.
Now, assuming the 20-year-old version of yourself would have listened, what's the one piece of advice you would have liked to give to yourself at 20 years old?
Wow. Yeah, 20. So 20, I was in active addiction. So if there's one piece of advice I would say is compassion, like massive compassion, to tell myself that it's okay. Everything that happened is okay. You're going to be okay. You might have flunked out of school. You might have had this addiction. You might have had all these poor choices, but it's okay. And that there's hope. And to show that person at 20 that there's people who are thriving in recovery. You don't have to live the way you're living.
No, I think that's good advice. And obviously it'd be easy to do and say what we say now. The question is, would we have listened at the age of 20? But I want to jump back to something you said, and it's something about which I love about your title of your book is smash your comfort zone. The cold showers we obviously touched on quite a bit, and obviously, hopefully, some of our listeners might be interested in going ahead and doing that. Again, I'm only one day into my 30-day challenge, so it's easy for me to say that. But I love that idea of the comfort zone because we often talk about how all the greatness or everybody that's done amazing things, whether it's business, personal life, whether it's weight loss, whether it's saving for a job, whatever it is they always talk about in some way, typically, going through and pushing past their comfort zone. And I just wanted to ask you, what made you title your book that and what kind of led you to really not only understanding, but just really understanding what it means to actually push through and smash through your comfort zone?
Yeah, that name just came to me. It's just one of those like intuitive names that just dropped in from my heart. It's just like, why do I do these cold showers? I'd keep getting asked, why do you keep doing these? Why do you keep doing this? And it's like, it's your comfort zone. I'm smashing my comfort zone. And I just like that word smashing. So smashing is just a powerful word. So, I actually have the dictionary here, the Cambridge Dictionary definition of comfort zone, which is comfort zone as a situation is a situation in which you feel comfortable and in which your ability and determination are not being tested. And, so nothing ever grows in a comfort zone. We hear that saying. And, for me to feel like the fear, let's say like when I was starting to take these cold showers, there was many stressors and in time. And one of the stressors was making cold calls. And I remember like I had so much fear around making these calls for my job. And so getting outside my comfort zone is picking up that phone and making those phone calls anyways and doing it. And just so that I was really comfortable where I was. And to get to the other side of that, it's to take action. And cold showers is a way to take action. It's a small habit that can lead to other habits. So it's not even necessarily about the cold shower. It's really about breaking through your modern lifestyle of comfort and warmth and fast, instant food, and we just live our whole, at least here in this country, most of us have, a comfortable lifestyle in some ways, even if you don't have a lot of money, but you just have more comfort. You're not out in the, the rain, the snow, and you're out in the elements. And I think the cold shower is one way to start to break through that, to show you, obviously way back before we had hot showers, the water was cold. So, there's something to the cold water. And, I just think to push beyond your comfort zone is going to inspire you and the people around you, because that's what it's done for me. And anyone who I've told about cold showers over the last few years, that's what's happened to them. I've never had anyone come back and say, I did the showers for 30 days and it sucked and I'll never do it again. I usually have people come back and say, I had massive energy. I had some breakthroughs during that time. And of course, there's physical benefits to it. And there's studies about that, about how it helps with mild depression and other things. It boosts your immune system. But, for me, it's that emotional, mental benefit of smashing through your comfort zone.
No, I just absolutely love that. A good friend of mine, Jeremy Slate, he's actually got a very successful podcast himself called Create Your Own Life. And he's been a guest. I've been a guest on his show, and we've referred a lot of people back, and he's back and forth to each other, and he himself swears by the cold shower. And you're one of just many people that has spoken about it, but I just love how you translate it into actually going ahead and break through those barriers and the comfort of your lifestyle and all those other things. So I wanted to ask you a question. What does the word accountability mean to you?
Wow. Yeah, the word accountability is everything. It's everything for a person, whether they're in addiction recovery, and it's everything to a person who if they want to be successful or be an entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is, if you're in recovery, addiction recovery, you need to have someone that's holding you accountable. It could be your family member, it could be a friend, it could be your mentor, it could be a sponsor. But that is life and death, is having that accountability. And then as an entrepreneur, or just someone who's, a high achieving person, having the external accountability as a coach to hold you to your goals is also everything. I firmly believe I wouldn't have had some of the more recent breakthroughs if I didn't have someone to talk to hold me accountable to those goals.
No, we love that word, and I think it's another one of those questions is there's no right or wrong answer, but I just love asking that because it just digs a little deep into each guest and why they think about certain things. But obviously, as you're going through your recovery or you're an entrepreneur, we all are accountable to people, whether it's family, business, personal. But the other component is we all also have people that are accountable to us. And I think that's the interesting component is people look at accountability. I think sometimes they miss the boat, but the reality is we're all accountable to others, but we also have others that are accountable to us. Maybe we just don't think about it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, that's true. There's definitely people who say accountable to me for many things, not just cold showers, but, just simple things, even just like, hey, I did my morning routine today. Someone will text me and tell me that. So.
No, and I think that's interesting you touch on that is because I have a lot of clients that I put on individual text messages every day, and some others we reach out once or twice a week, just quick email. And I think the reality of it is sometimes that little bit of accountability from somebody else really gets you not only through that day or through that workout or throughout that day, that week, and maybe helped you finish that project that you were kind of on not sure whether you're going to do it or not. And I think the reality is every single one of us can probably reach out to others in a positive way and just say, hey, just wanted to check in, make sure and then fill in the blank, whether it's working out, whether it's job, whether it's family, whatever it is. We all have different things going on in our life. And I think if we all hold each other accountable, it can help each other get through those things.
Yeah, well, I agree. And nothing, now that we're kind of going down this path, is that nothing makes me happier than when someone randomly, almost divinely texts me or calls me, and it's just at the right time to check in and say, hey, how you doing? I just want to see how you're doing. And, it's hugely beneficial to me and the person.
No, I could not agree more. And I have a couple people that go to the same gym that I do. And if we're not at the gym at the same times or regular times, we'll kind of send each other group text messages. We also have some things we do via Instagram, but we just all know that we're there for each other. And like you said, there's nothing better when someone reaches out and said, hey, because of you, I finished this, or hey, I was thinking about you and I kept going. I didn't quit. That's the best part about this show and the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you could magically snap your fingers and fast forward to exactly 1 year from today, and you could have accomplished any single one goal, what would that one goal be?
The one goal would be to finish my second book and to be traveling, speaking, talking about it, and teaching the principles in that book. And that second book that I'm writing is the story of my addiction. It's my addiction story. So it's the backstory and it's the front story. It's the addiction part, but it's the recovery part, which is mostly focused on and all the habits that I use over the 12 years of long-term recovery, and just sharing that, because we keep a lot of that stuff to ourselves a lot of times, not just in addiction, but in other things. We just kind of keep things that can really open the doors for people. So 1 year from now, that book's published, and I'm out there speaking and talking about it, helping people with that book. That's ideally what I'd love to be.
No, I think that's so important that you touched on it, is because in the media, we always see the wins, we always see the glamour, but it's during those losses and it's behind the scenes when people are struggling and banging their head against the wall when they have that breakthrough. So I think it's remarkable that you're going to write that story, and the reality is it'll probably help a lot of people. So definitely look forward to that being concluded. So before we let you go, Jesse, I wanted to ask if you have some parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, you have the power to change the rest of your story, no matter what happened. You have the power to change the rest of your story. So start surrounding yourself with people who, there's a quote by Dan Sullivan I love. He says, surround yourself with people who remind you more of your future than of your past. And so just surround yourself with those people that will help you to show you that it is possible, that a life that you can thrive with no matter where you've been is possible. And so, yeah, you can change the rest of your story.
I love that. You have the power to change the rest of your story. Now, we can't go back and change the beginning, or we can't change yesterday, but we all have the power to change the rest of our story. So I really love that. And then last question, what's the best way for our listeners to either follow you, find out about your book, or possibly purchase your book?
Yeah, the best way would be just my name, jesseharless.com, or even entrepreneursinrecovery.com, and you'll be able to find links to my book on those websites.
Well, listen, Jesse, I truly appreciate your time. I think your story is remarkable. I think what you're doing and how you're paying it forward in your own way. But I definitely would recommend our listeners to check out your book as well as your website. And I challenge our listeners to go ahead and, whether they're listening to this in the morning, afternoon, or evening, is try that cold shower technique. You're not going to love it right away, possibly, but you definitely will see the results. And again, I'm saying this only one day in, but I'm 1 for 1 so far.
Awesome. Love it. Yep, you can do it.
Thanks, buddy. I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Thank you for listening to episode number 156. Back in December of 2015, Jesse took the 30-day cold shower, and literally, he hasn't stopped since. Today, he shares his thoughts on the infamous comfort zone, and I truly appreciate his opinion. He shared how nothing ever grows in the comfort zone, and I couldn't agree more. When Jesse spoke about writing his book, he shared his 8-minute daily habit. He didn't stay up for an entire week straight and knock out that book. Instead, he wrote every single night for 8 minutes consistently. He took that first step and then the next, and compounded daily. Those steps led to the completion of his book. In his closing remarks, Jesse mentioned something that has stuck with me. He said that we all have the power to change the rest of our story. In conclusion of today's episode, I ask you to look at your current story, chapter, and life. Do you stand where you want to? Have you reached the peak of your everything? If not, don't worry. Although none of us can go back to yesterday, last week, or even last month, we all can look forward. We can't replay the fourth quarter of yesterday's game, but we can prepare for our next quarter. I challenge you today, don't look back, regret, or worry. Instead, look ahead. Prepare for your next, and go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.